In the waning weeks of the Florida legislative session, it is not unusual to have bills pop out of seemingly nowhere that make big changes to laws. The press is trying to make the election bill, PCB SAC 2406, one of these extreme measures. Unfortunately, it is not. This bill has two major changes. One, it limits drop-off locations for mail-in ballots to official supervisor of elections offices that have been in service for a minimum of 1 year, and two, it returns Florida to a runoff called second primary in the bill, ensuring that a party's nominee has a majority of that party's support. This bill could do so much more, and hopefully before the 2026 election. For governor and cabinet, the legislature will implement the changes I recommend. It only makes sense that mail-in ballots should only be collected at official offices of the supervisor of elections. While I am unaware of nefarious drop-off locations that would collect ballots to have them delivered late or destroyed, it is only a matter of time before someone tries to negatively impact an election in that way. Plus, aren't they called mail-in ballots? Why should there be a drop-off location anywhere that isn't already opened by the supervisor of elections? This seems like an additional expense that supervisors should not have. I have mixed feelings about returning to a runoff system. First, the negative impact of a runoff system is the expense for taxpayers in an election that sees depressed turnout. That's one reason we got rid of it in the first place. Second, in multiple candidate races, it doesn't seem that someone who reaches the high 20 to mid-30s percentile should be declared the winner in our system of government. Finally, my guess is that over time, the runoff will give credibility to the ranked choice voting advocates. Ranked choice voting is a horrible idea and, in my opinion, unconstitutional. Critics of this bill will say that the runoff hurts conservative candidates for governor like Matt Gaetz, or that a runoff would have helped Gwen Graham against Andrew Gillum. History does not show that to be the case. Runoff elections, generally, produce nominees who are either more conservative or more liberal. In the cases cited above, a runoff would help Matt Gaetz and likely would have solidified Andrew Gillum as nominees. The truth is, most bills have unintended consequences. A good example is when the legislature clarified Florida's resign to run law to ensure that a statewide elected official did not have to resign to run for president. They passed this at the behest of Gov. DeSantis, and it ended up backfiring. My prediction is that if Florida kept the resign to run law, which the legislature should reinstate, DeSantis would have waited to announce his intentions to run for president to ensure that former President Trump lost his footing in the race. If he had waited until the fall to decide, I believe he may have waited until 2028 instead of spending $150 million to compete and come in second in one state. Finally, if the legislature is going to have a major election bill, which this one is not, it should consider changing three areas. 1. Live stream everywhere ballots are stored, distributed, voted, collected, counted, and canvassed. 2. Make all counties go to electronic workbooks in the precincts. And 3. Allow veterans to wear their service caps if they are poll workers or poll watchers. Despite all the conspiracy theories about watermarked and Chinese ballots, the truth is that nefarious people do not need fake ballots to illegally impact the outcome of an election. There are plenty of ballots right there in the supervisor's office and precincts. Yeah, if Americans want to claim that we have the freest, fairest, and most transparent elections in the world, this step must be taken nationwide, and Florida should lead the way. Inside the precinct is the number one place where fraud can take place undetected, because once a fraudulent ballot is counted as a vote, it will never be uncounted. It is the one crime where getting away with the crime removes the evidence. One way to stop fraud in the precinct, other than live streaming, is to require electronic workbooks. Precinct workers would no longer be able to tell who has not voted, sign their name, and vote their ballot after the precinct is closed. Some will call this accusation conspiratorial. Fine. Then why don't we implement to ensure we have free, fair, and transparent elections? Finally, and this is an easy one, allow veterans to wear their service caps as both poll workers and poll watchers. If someone wants to cast a fraudulent ballot, dare them to steal it in front of someone who risked their life so we have the right to vote. Furthermore, I call on leaders of the Republican and Democratic parties of Florida and the Republican and Democratic National Committees to ask our veterans for just one more day of service, Election Day. Ask veterans to don their service caps and volunteer as poll watchers and poll workers to ensure that we have the freest, fairest, and most transparent elections in the world.